Hello and welcome to Host Planet Bitesize, the podcast brought to you by Host Planet and Hostfully. My name's James Farley, the founder of Host Planet, and our goal is to share everything you need to know about buying and managing short-term rentals. Today's guest is Karishma Lunawat from PriceLabs, and she's got 5 tips to share about minimum stay strategies. Okay, real talk now for all you hosts out there. You know that moment when your guest messages you again with, "Hey, what's the Wi-Fi code?" Or you're staring at 5 different calendars, wondering if you've accidentally double booked the cottage. Yes, we've all been there. That's why here at Host Planet, we recommend Hostfully. It's basically your rentals control center. It handles bookings across all the big platforms, syncs your calendars to ensure there are no double bookings, automates guest messages, and even creates these really slick digital guidebooks that stop all the repeat questions. Honestly, it just makes your life easier and keeps your guests happier, helping you achieve those all-important 5-star reviews. And here is a little bonus. If you're a Host Planet listener, you can get $500 off onboarding for Hostfully's property management software and 30% off digital guidebooks for life. Just hit the link in the show notes and use the codes PLANET500 for the PMS and Host Planet GB for the guidebooks. And if you'd like a proper walkthrough, there's also a link to book a demo with Frank Bosey from Hostfully. He will show you how it all works. Less stress, more bookings, sorted with Hostfully. Karishma, thank you for joining us on Host Planet Bitesize. You've got 5 minimum stay tactics to share, so take it away with tip number 1.
Absolutely. Tip number 1 is data. A lot of times what hosts do is start with what they feel is right, or, their gut instinct that, hey, I think 3 nights minimum is good enough for this, or, maybe I can just put 4-night minimum for my weekend, because a lot of times it feels safe or it feels manageable because everyone else is doing it. But our gut isn't the best source of truth. Data is. So the first tip would be to look at what's happening in your market, look at what your competitors are doing, look at what guests are really booking at, and then probably set your minimum stays. A simple example of that would be, let's say you think a 2-night minimum or a 3-night minimum for your weekend is what you feel is right, but that's a super low demand weekend and people are probably just booking 1 or 2 nights. You might not even show up in search results. So look at the data and then make your decisions. That would be the first tip.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think you're right. So often hosts and property managers have a gut feeling that they need to have a minimum of 2 or 3 or 4, but without knowing what your guests want, then it is just a guess. It is just a guess. Okay, then Karishma. So tip number 2.
Tip number 2 would be to really make sure you're getting your gaps filled and your last minute stays configured well. And this one's really intuitive, because let's say a guest checks out on a Thursday and another one arrives on Saturday. Now you have a 2-night gap, but let's say you've set up your minimum to be 3-night long. So this gap essentially becomes unbookable and you're losing out on some money that you could have made on a 2-night gap. So use if you're using PriceLabs, there's something called orphan gaps setting. Make sure it's configured correctly so that you don't lose money on those gaps that are created by too longer bookings. And second one in the same part would be to make sure your last minute minimum stays are configured well, because let's say you have a last minute cancellation and you have a 2-night gap open, like a 2-night open for like tomorrow or day after tomorrow, and you've set up again a rigid 3-night minimum rule. Even when travelers are looking to book stays last minute and you're going to make some money, you're probably losing out on that revenue because you have longer minimum stays last minute. So your last minute minimum stay and your orphan gap minimum stays are super important to optimize on the occupancy part of your profile. And obviously no money is not a good option when you can earn some money. So yeah.
Yeah. There's a couple of points here, isn't there? Because
Yeah.
from an OTA point of view, if you're available for more nights, then the likes of Airbnb and Booking.com will reward you because you're
Yes.
available. And also, what's you're suggesting? Let's say you have a minimum 3 night stay, but you have 2 nights available.
Mhm.
Would you automatically charge the 3 night price for those 2 nights?
It really depends on where this is. So, for example, if you have this really far out in the future, you have the opportunity to charge more and see if people are willing to pay more, because as you come closer to the check-in date, you can drop your prices. But if it's like really last minute, then probably raising your prices might not make as much sense, because at this point people are probably looking for deals, or you want to fill up your rooms faster.
Yeah, because I guess that there'll be property managers out there saying, well, I've got a 3 night minimum because I've got costs with cleaning and that kind of thing,
Yeah.
and I have to charge this minimum price. So they might say, well, I'll put the price up, and if I get the booking, then great. If not,
Yeah.
then it's not the end of the world. Okay, then Karishma. So tip number 3.
Tip number three, and this is a really important one, is to protect your far out bookings. And this is where it really gets strategic. Let's say we're in July now, and someone wants to book a 2 night for Christmas. You get very happy because, hey, I'm going to get a booking, and you say yes. But what you're essentially doing is you're locking out an entire high demand, high value period for some guaranteed revenue today, and you're giving up on the opportunity cost of getting a longer, higher value booking, maybe probably a few months down the line. So this balance between getting your revenue locked in today versus losing out on the opportunity cost of getting better, higher value bookings is super important. So that's where making sure that if dates are really far out, or if it's a very high demand period, having higher, better minimum stays to optimize on the revenue part of your profile is super important.
Yeah. So if you're saying if it's like, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months, even a year before,
Yeah.
what do you think the minimum should be?
It really depends from market to market, honestly. So, like, there's people who start with like a 5 night minimum and go up to like a 7 night minimum. But again, this it's very hard to generalize what your minimum should be. Going back to point number one, look at data, look at what works, what doesn't work, and then figure out your minimum stays. Yeah.
Yeah, the point being, you don't want to take a 1 night stay
Yes.
and then later on that costs you a 3 week booking or a month
Exactly.
long booking
Because that
or
one
something like
is,
that.
yeah, blocking out the entire period that you might have gotten booking for.
Exactly, and you can obviously set the parameters here in a tool like
Price
PriceLabs.
labs.
Okay, then Karishma. So tip number 4.
Tip number four, and I think this is one of the most underutilized features even in Price Labs, is to make sure your minimum stay reflects the season, not just the calendar. So think of it like this: travelers book differently depending on the time of the year. In summer, maybe families are looking for like week-long stays, whereas in low season periods, maybe there's just like folks looking for a weekend quick getaway. So, what you should do is break down your calendar by high season, by shoulder season, by low season, by high demand or low demand periods, and adjust your minimum stays accordingly, depending on what works for those periods. What are the kind of guests you're getting? What are the kind of bookings is the market getting? And then adjust your minimum stays accordingly. And what really helps here is PriceLabs has recently released their auto stay feature. So what we do there is give you a complete minimum stay recommendation month by month for the entire year, depending on what's working and what's not working on data in your market, in your neighborhood, and stuff like that. So the algorithm does its magic, and you don't have to really shoot in the dark saying, "Hey, maybe this could work, this couldn't work." You just look at the recommendations for every month given by Price Labs based on like market data and make your decisions.
Perfect. Making it easier for people to break down the different seasons and to implement their rules accordingly. Okay, then Karishma. So number 5.
Um, all of this might sound super complicated, and a lot of times hosts also get overwhelmed by the idea of adding so many tiers to their minimum stays. So the last tip would be to not get into the manual burden of it and just automate it with a good dynamic pricing tool. End of the day, you have so many things to do as a host. You have to manage the operations, the guest experience, cleaning people. So this is not another thing that you want to add to your plate. You automate all of this. So for example, with Price Labs, you can set the lowest boundary that you can accept as minimum stays. There's a lot of hosts that absolutely are not okay with one night stays. So you can say that, hey, you communicate that to the software that I do not ever want one night stays. My lowest minimum is 2. And then you can set your rules for last minute, for far out, for orphan gaps, for seasons. And you never have to worry about, hey, there's a gap and I forgot to lower my minimum stay, because the algorithm automatically does it for you. So automate, automate, automate. Don't add one more thing to your plate when you have already so much to take care of.
Okay, then 5 brilliant tips there. So we've got the first one, which is data. Number 2, get your gaps and last minute stays sorted out. Number 3, protect your far out bookings. Make sure you're getting the longer booking rather than the 1 or 2 night stays. Break down the calendar for the different seasons and automate as much as possible. Okay, then Karishma, just tell us a bit more about PriceLabs and where people can find out more information.
Absolutely. You can just go to our website, hello.pricelabs.co. We have a 30-day free trial, so you can just get in there, add your listing and see what recommendations are, what's working out for your market, what isn't. And if you have any questions, you need anything, you can reach out to us at support@pricelabs.co. We are super quick in replying.
Superb. We'll put all those details in the show notes, including a link to a special offer as well. Brilliant. Karishma, thank you so much for sharing those tips and for joining us on Host Planet Bitesize.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
All right, that's it for today's episode. Remember, this podcast is brought to you in collaboration with Hostfully, which is trusted by short-term rental professionals across the globe. As a Host Planet listener, you get 2 exclusive offers: $500 off onboarding for Hostfully's property management software. Just use the code PLANET500, and 30% off digital guidebooks for life. Just use the code HostPlanetGB. To grab these deals, click the link in the show notes or head to hostfully.com. For more free education tips and trends from the STR industry, visit hostplanet.club, where you can sign up for our newsletter, listen to our podcasts, and download a suite of ebooks for hosts and property managers. That's it for today's episode of Host Planet Bitesize. Until next time, happy hosting.